Did the Rams fail to address this pressing need? And what ultimately was the downfall of the 2025-2026 Los Angeles Rams? Who gets the blame? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Part of the number one sports podcast network, by the way. Congratulations, Locked On, for that. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've covered LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleach Report, SI, Dodgers Nation, the LA Sports Report. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. Next season will be his 12th year covering the Los Angeles Rams. That hurts for me to say, but also kind of makes me feel good too, knowing that he's been doing this show that long. Travis Rogers, you can follow him on the X at Travis Rogers, the People's Champion. Let's get right into it. First of all, I want to tell the audience yesterday, the first 5 minutes, it was Travis and I breaking down the season, doing the postmortem of the NFC Championship game, and then my internet, my hotspot, you guys know, moving to a new spot, internet today, we're on the hotspot. He went out, and then I did the last 25 minutes of the show. I was not hogging it. I was not, cut my mic off someone and find a way to get to Travis. But we got him back, and we're going to unpack what happened in the NFC Championship game, Trav.
Look, you can feel free to talk as much as you want. If you want the last 25 minutes to yourself, just let me know, and I will sit here quietly, and you can knock it all out. It's fine by me.
No, the people wanted the People's Champ, and we got a lot of great comments, by the way. I think we're going to read those Friday. A lot of you guys showing us a lot of love for the year that we did have. It was a fun year. It was a furious year. It was a year with ups and downs, mostly ups, but kind of getting back to yesterday, I think, just to get back to what you were saying, it was really a microcosm of the entire season. It really did epitomize the 2025-2026 Rams, where you have an MVP performance from Matthew Stafford. The offense looks unstoppable at times. And then special teams. The kicking's good. Then it's a punt return that gets muffed. The punt return's fine. Then they miss a kick. It's like they just couldn't put together a complete operation for the special teams unit. And ultimately, when you lose by 4 points and that muff punt leads to 7 points, you can say that, hey, that probably lost them the game.
It's not a stretch, that's for sure. The Rams had two fatal flaws all season long, and ultimately both of them showed up in the most important game of the season. The two fatal flaws, number one, like you just mentioned, D-Mac, were their special teams, and it manifested in just about every single way that it could. It manifested in them getting kicks blocked, PATs and field goals. It manifested in punts getting blocked. We saw that happen in the playoffs against Carolina. It manifested in punts being returned for touchdowns. We saw that in Seattle. It manifested in them botching their own punt return in the NFC Championship game, where X Smith botched it twice. He got on top of the first one. The second one, not so much. He slips, the ball hits him. They get it. They get an easy touchdown. And like you mentioned, they lost by 4 points. They gave Seattle 7. They lost by 4. That, you don't have to be a math expert to figure out what that means. So, and then the other part of it is, when was the Rams' explosive play on special teams in the return game? Didn't really exist. We saw Jared Verse make one really nice play on a black PAT, but the fact that you can point to one good special teams play all year long, I think speaks to the struggles that they had. They fired Chase Blackburn late in the season. And look, I'm not here calling for people's job. I think that's bad karma, but it did feel like they were way late on that. It felt like it was way too after the point of no return to get some of this stuff fixed, and it never really got fixed. It quieted down a little bit in the kicking game, but the rest of it was still well below the standard. That's number one. Number two is, they really couldn't cover anybody all year long. Their secondary, in particular, their corners, they just did not have the horsepower. There were moments where guys played well. There were moments where Ahkello Witherspoon would have a nice game, or Kobe Durant would have a nice game, and Emmanuel Forbes would look like, he had turned a corner for a period of time, and then it was right back to the other way where he was getting picked on along the way. Darius Williams had a terrible NFC Championship game. They just never really had the corners that they needed to cover guys. And when you're playing a team like Seattle that's got a JSN and Sam Darnold, who, I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, had probably the best game of his entire life. And it just got to the point where, they just couldn't sustain it. You're asking so much of the offense in that situation to figure out a way to score and score and score and score. And when they're not able to get those points on fourth down or whatever it is, that's the game. And that's what happened in the NFC Championship. They just finally, their two big problems all season long finally caught up to them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we can harp on the special teams. And by the way, I wanted to tell you about this funny reel I saw on Instagram. It was POV, your house is on fire. And it shows a guy with a dog and he's throwing it down a stairway, but then it says Rams punt returner. And then he looks at the punt returner and he looks at the fire and he's like, well, it's the same thing either way. Right. So it's like the dog is screwed. So yeah, like it gives you an idea of like what you're going through. If it's not kicking, it's punt returning. If it's not punt returning, it's kick coverage and kick return coverage. There's just so many examples. And yeah, someone's got to fall on the sword. I'm not a big call for your job guy either, but yeah, I mean, look, Chase Blackburn should have been fired and replaced earlier than he was, and it would have given a little more time to fix that operation because Benko Tweeka did a nice job, and you got to give Harrison Mevis some credit for making some makeable kicks there. But ultimately, it was a weakness, and you don't want to have a special teams group be a weakness when that's the area of your team that costs the least amount of money to fix, right? I mean, that's the area of your team that you aren't really burdened by the salary cap as much to be able to have a good special teams unit. But let's be honest, we can talk about the special teams unit all day, every day. The bottom line with this team is they were so close to overcoming an atrocious secondary because of elite offensive play. But you ran into a Seahawks team that you got to give credit to Sam Darnold. He was making throws under pressure, throws that we've seen him make mistakes from in his career, and he does it. And you look at the game he had, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he just picked apart the Rams defense. Darius Williams gave 93 yards on 5 targets. Kobe Durant, 47 yards on 2 touchdowns for Kobe Durant. Give it up. Then Quentin Lake, 27 yards in that touchdown when he was defending Cooper Kupp. And here's the big issue too. The defensive line did not get the pressure that we were hoping for them to get. They get 22 pressures, 8 came Jared Verse. Byron Young looked compromised. Braden Fisk had some moments. They sacked Sam Darnold 3 times, but they had to be elite. They had to bring their A-plus game to win this game, and it really was their B-minus game, and that just wasn't going to get it done.
No, it wasn't. I think you brought up 2 really good points there. Number one, Jared Verse is a terrific player. He is going to the Pro Bowl. I think he will make an all-pro team, more than once by the time it's all said and done. He's awesome. Okay, full period, sentence, paragraph, stop. I like Jared Verse. He's a great player. He didn't show up in that game. He really did not impact the game in a way that you would think. If you're going to be a great player, and I'm not comparing anybody to Aaron Donald. That's unfair to compare people to Aaron Donald. But great players like Aaron Donald affect the game when they have to affect the game. The great moment in the Super Bowl that they won in Super Bowl 56 is where Sean McVay's mic'd up on the sidelines. He's not saying it to Aaron Donald. He's just thinking out loud. He's like, this is where Aaron Donald makes a play. Well, what happened? Aaron Donald made 2 plays back-to-back that kind of put the Super Bowl away for him. That's what those guys are able to do. That's the level that Jared Verse needs to get on. It's not just, making a splash play here or there, but actually finding a way to impact the game in the most important time. So I think that's a big part of it. Number 2 is something clicked in the middle of the fourth quarter when the Rams and Seahawks played that Thursday night game. Something clicked in Sam Darnold where all of a sudden that Darnold that we saw during the regular season against Minnesota, during the playoff game against Minnesota, The first game at SoFi Stadium this year against the Seahawks that the Rams won 21-19. The first 3.5 quarters of the Thursday night game against Sam Darnold, that dude was the bad version of Sam Darnold. He was throwing into bad situations. He was making quick decisions that weren't particularly good. He was holding the ball too long. He was taking sacks and he was throwing picks. Then all of a sudden, that stuff stopped. Like he just all of a sudden he looked like the guy that took his team to the number 1 seed. He looked like the guy that was able to, lead his team up and down the field and push the ball down the field when he needed to do it. Darnold had a terrific game. There's no qualifications about it that he figured something out how to deal with that Rams pressure that he had not figured out previously. And he threw his team. He went pass for pass, play for play with the MVP of the league and Matthew Stafford, and he's going to the Super Bowl because of it. He was terrific.
I think the biggest thing for Sam Darnold is, you look at his PFF grades and things like that. It wasn't mind-blowing stuff with multiple big-time throws, but the number that was important and the number that mattered most was he had just one turnover-worthy throw. And that was how they were going to lose that game, is if the Rams won the turnover margin and they disrupted Sam Darnold, but they did not. I was hoping for Halloween in January. We did not get that. It was Christmas in January for Seahawks fans, and they're going to get the biggest gift, and they're going to win the Super Bowl. And it's going to kill me to see Sam Darnold win a Super Bowl before Josh Rosen. I can't believe that's going to happen, but it is. And I have been in group chats for years saying that no USC quarterback has won a Super Bowl. No USC quarterback has ever been a starting quarterback in the Super Bowl. And I'm getting hate texts from friends. I'm getting nasty stuff from friends. And it's, my friends, they're very mean people to me when things don't go my way. And yeah, I'm hearing it from a lot of different directions. So good, kudos to Sam Darnold. Like I said, I like, there's something about Sam Darnold I just really like. I can't explain it. I just he's a blue collar,
That's it. That's it right there. He doesn't whine. He doesn't complain. Even when he was getting his you-know-what kicked, and even when he was throwing interceptions and getting sacked 8-9 times in a game, he never once pointed fingers. He never once did anything other than accept responsibility for what was going on. He's a hard guy to root against. It sucks that he's on a team in the division that you and I are a part of, and we talk about it, and they're going to have to run into him a few times, but he's a hard guy not to like.
I will say this. If Matthew Stafford's the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks, it's the best team of all time. I mean, I don't know if I can go that far, but just Matthew Stafford had to run. He had to fly to where Sam Darnold could walk to in that game.
Yeah.
As far as just the throws that Stafford made to Devontae, I mean, the throws all over the field just to keep them every time they were bouncing back and punching back when they got punched. It was just an MVP performance, a Herculean performance, but it just wasn't good enough. But he had no shame in his game after his performance in the NFC Championship game.
No. He was great. The Rams did not lose because of their offense. I don't think, we could go around the block 100 times on whether or not they should have kicked a field goal when they were down by, what was that, 4th and 3, and with about 5 minutes to go in the game. Maybe they should have kicked a field goal. They still would have had to get another one. They still would have had to get a stop. I think that it's kind of a 50-50 thing. I can see that win both ways, but this was a problem of defense and special teams. And Matthew Stafford was, he looked like the MVP all over again. Like you said, the margins that he's dealing with are like this, and he still performs at the highest level.
And he came back and he tucked his daughters into bed. I don't know if you saw that heartwarming video. I don't know. It was pretty cute. But, good for Matthew Stafford. But is Matthew Stafford going to be the Rams quarterback next season? And is Chris Shula going to be the defensive coordinator? And did Les Snead fail to address a position of need that could have won the Rams Super Bowl? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
There's nothing quite like being in an NBA arena, right? The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, not so great. Not so simple, that's for sure. That's why Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. Puts the advantage back where it belongs, with us, with the fans, right? You open up that Gametime app, you pick an upcoming NBA game, and tickets, boom, locked in within minutes. I love this. You've heard me talk about Gametime this, and I mentioned it every single time because by far it's my favorite part about Gametime. All-in pricing up front, which means no surprise fees at checkout, which I can't stand. It's like, oh, I like that price. I like that seat. I'm going to buy that. And then by the time you're done, it's like, wait, that's not even close. Never at Gametime. They got you covered. Everything feels quick. Everything feels intuitive and stress-free from start to finish. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not gametime.com. And let's talk about FanDuel, right? It's the last football game of the season on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, one chance to get in on all the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60. That's hard to believe. And FanDuel's making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. So whether you're backing the favorite, Seahawks, whether you are riding the underdog, Pats, or building one last same game parlay, this is the game everybody's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from the kickoff to the final whistle. And if you are a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
And we're off running here on Locked On Rams. Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast listeners, your team every day. Also, a reminder to join the Everydayers Club. You get ad-free audio. You get an exclusive members-only Discord chat. You get exclusive merch. You get exclusive content. Also, you support the show. Getting close to 22,000 subscribers. Yesterday's episode, we had over 400 comments. 400 comments on yesterday's episode. Read some here, Travis. Deshaun Howard says, round of applause for Doug McCain, D-Mac the Great, Travis Rogers, Big Trav, Sweet Tea, the People's Champ. We got at least, we got, I thank all of you brothers for your humor, your knowledge, your passion for the game, for the love you give my advice. Laugh off this season like you did after you fell off your bike in front of a cute girl back in the day. Rams for life. We got another fan here. Floyd says, D-Mac and Trav, we appreciate your brutal honesty all season long. But yeah, we'll read some of those as the week. There's a lot of funny ones there, but yeah, I guess we'll laugh like a cute girl off the bike. I mean, what?
I did that. You know? I think we all did that. That happened. You got to pretend that it's kind of what you're trying to do in the first place. You can't cry and just get up and keep it moving. You
got to play it off, man. You got to be smooth with it for sure. But lots of everydayers down there. And if you guys are in the comments, definitely go into the description and look at the link to join the Everyday Listeners Club. It's definitely a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it. But all right, Travis, here in our second segment. So you look at the game, and like I said, it was no secret. Everyone that followed this team even a little bit knew that the secondary was a weakness. And you kind of trace your steps back, and you go back into the draft, and you look at the Rams, and they use their highest pick on a tight end that Matthew Stafford did look to in the last play of the season. And yes, if you go back, you look at the all-22, Devontae was covered, Puka was covered. It was a tough possession, and there's no doubt about it. Stafford did whatever he could. But at the end of the day, he was injured, and Terrence Ferguson and Sanchez was their third or fourth string tight end. And then you look at the trade deadline. You give up a day 3 pick swap to get Roger McCreary. And look, the bottom line is, had this team improved their secondary, had you had a couple more competent cornerbacks, it's a pretty decent chance that they're playing in the Super Bowl. It's a painful reality to accept. I think that there's no doubt about it. They're going to draft a cornerback in the next draft, and who knows if they go out and sign someone. They're going to have up to $75 million in cap space. We'll talk about some of those moves they can make to get even more. But did Les Snead kind of fail this team by not addressing that position?
I don't think so, but I think it's a fair question because, look, I think it's very difficult to figure out whether or not you drafted correctly, even after 1 year. I think it really is a 2 to 3 year kind of window to determine whether or not you pick the right player. Terrence Ferguson had some very nice moments. I think he will have more moving forward. I really do think that he's going to be an important part of what they do offensively. That's number one. Number two, Sean McVay is an offensive-minded head coach. I'm not saying you can put all your eggs on the offensive basket, but I think they're going to put most of their eggs in that offensive basket. And we saw what they've done in some previous drafts where they went far more towards the defensive side of the ball with Verse and Fisk and guys like that. That's kind of where they are. Now, to your point, though, I think it's a good one. They clearly needed work back there. This is why I think they went and got Emmanuel Forbes last season in the middle of the year, kind of took a flyer there. They go and they try McCreary. They do that. They take Ahkello Witherspoon, who was just kind of waiting around to see which team was going to pick him up. None of these guys were huge impact players along the way. And it obviously was a huge part of why they're done and why they're not going to play. I agree with you. I think where it gets a little bit complicated, and I'm sure we'll spend many, many hours talking about this between now and the draft, is what happens at quarterback. Is Matthew Stafford coming back? If he's coming back, then I think those draft picks clearly have to be used in the secondary and at corner. If he's not, then that changes everything. Then you got to do all sorts of different stuff to try to figure out what you're going to do at quarterback. But as far as a wish list goes, the corner is at the top. No question about it. I don't think that it's a less need failure. I think it was let's try to get a little bit better over here. Let's try to do it on a discount over there. And it caught up to them. I mean, they got deep into the fourth quarter of the NFC Championship game before it finally got them. So I don't think it was a failure necessarily, but I certainly think it was a problem all season long that we're just never able to get coached up right, personnel right, or any of it.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily like a failure to me. It's a failure in how it worked out, and the result at the end of the day, it was a failure. But I don't think the process necessarily was a true failure. The process would have been a failure if they didn't take a flyer on Emmanuel Forbes and develop him like they thought he could be. A failure would have been not bringing Ahkello Witherspoon back, or I mean, they did pay Darius Williams, right? I mean, they did invest someone in that position. I think where they went wrong was overestimating how good that defensive line is. And I'm people appreciate us for being brutally honest, and I'm going to just come out and flat out say it. The defensive line is not as good as they think they are. And that's the players and that's the coaches. This defensive line does not have Myles Garrett or Watt or Will Anderson or Danielle Hunter. It's not the Houston Texans defensive line. It's not one of those lines. There is talent there. Jared Verse has the potential to be an every down elite pass rusher, but they don't have those made men yet. And they thought that they could get by with that group generating pressure, a really good defensive coordinator in Chris Shield that could mask some of those deficiencies. But ultimately, the defensive line, their biggest strength, wasn't as good as they thought it was going to be. And that trickled down to the secondary. And I think that's what happened.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. The reason the secondary was as vulnerable as it was is the pass rush was not getting home the way it needed to. The way that you're going to deal with a secondary that maybe is a little under-talented is by having a defensive line that is terrorizing quarterbacks and they don't have to cover for very long. And that's not what it was. Sam Darnold had a lot of time on Sunday night that we saw it. And look, they made some changes. They get Puna Ford. I think that's why they had the success they had against the running game this year. I think that you had some guys I think Kobe Turner had a nice season. I think that Tyler Davis had some nice moments during the season along the way. But I agree with you. I think collectively that group would need to do more if that's how you're going to operate in your secondary. And there were moments where it did. There were moments where it seemed like they were really starting to fire. But to your point, it's got to be a far more consistent sort of thing. And it wasn't, and it really wasn't in the last part. Other than that Chicago game, the defense was kind of, you just never knew what you were going to get. In Chicago, they showed up. They did a really good job against the Bears, but the rest of it wasn't what you were looking for.
The bottom line is top line receivers can get whatever they want to get season long, so that wasn't going to change. But the truth is, I just don't think there was the guy out there that they love. Like, you can't doubt this franchise. If they wanted Sauce Gardner and they thought he was the guy, they would have gotten him, right? But like they are kind of banking that war chest. I will say though, with Matthew Stafford having the season that he had, is he going to have that season again? Probably not. But the hope for me is that he doesn't have to, because they address some other needs. So you just get a really, really good to great Stafford that can be the MVP and pick his spots and still give you another great season, another big, deep Super Bowl run. And coming up next, we're going to talk Matthew Stafford. He had some comments yesterday about his future. Does it sound like he's coming back? Well, we'll let you decide. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right. With football season coming down to its final stretch, now's the perfect time to close it out strong. PrizePicks makes watching the game even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections. No drafts, no waiting around, just football action all the way through the very last game. PrizePicks is super easy to get started. You just pick 2 or more players and you choose more or less on their projections. What could be easier than that? And it makes watching games incredibly engaging, especially during playoffs and that big Sunday that's coming up, right? It's a great way to keep playing fantasy football even after that season-long league is over. And the new social feed makes it fun to follow your friends, share lineups, and get inspiration from other players as well. So here's what you do. You download the PrizePicks app today, and you use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Travis. So the number one question, no doubt about it, is will Matthew Stafford return to be the Rams quarterback next season? And there were some reports that he did want to continue his playing career. And after the game, Sean McVay was asked the question, and it was a spicy Sean McVay. He was a little heaty out there, and he did say, yeah, I mean, if he still wants to play, what the HE double hockey stick kind of question is that? So he was kind of a little caught off guard by that question. Then yesterday, Matthew Stafford, he said on his podcast on Sirius XM Radio with Jim Gray about his future, it'll be a lot. It'll be a lot that goes into it. It's a physical and a mental and emotional decision, a personal and family decision as well. So we'll figure all that out and all that stuff with some time. I know I had a ton of fun playing football this season, had so much fun playing for the Rams. So I'm ready to figure that out. I'll be ready to figure that out. That moment isn't right now. I have so much more time, I feel like, to reflect on just the people and the season that we just had. I want to appreciate that and give it time that it deserves before I start thinking personally about what's next for me and my family. Translation, he's coming back, and he's going to be the quarterback for the Rams in 2026.
I think so, too.
I would be shocked.
Yeah, I think so, too. I boil it down. So this is what, the third offseason that we're going into where there's a little uncertainty about whether or not he's going to come back and play quarterback. And I'm going to take the same approach I've taken through the previous two, which is this. You said it. Does it look like he's enjoying himself out there? Hell yes. Does it look like he's still playing at an incredibly high level? Absolutely. Do they pay quarterbacks $50 million a year? Yes. And do the Rams have a realistic option to find somebody better or even close to Matthew Stafford in the draft or through a trade or anything else? Almost certainly not. I'll add all that up. That means he comes back. Now, maybe he wakes up in the middle of February or whatever it is, and his body's not feeling right or whatever, and he can make a different decision. But the Rams are still good. He's still good. He's not just going to go somewhere else to get a few more bucks. The Rams are going to take care of him economically, and they'll work something out there. As long as he wants to play, this is where he's going to play. And the Rams certainly know that there isn't a better quarterback out there that you could go do it. They're going to have to hit the reset button eventually, but this wasn't one of those years where you're looking at going, well, it was okay, but he's going to win the MVP. You don't walk away from a guy that won the MVP. And I don't think the guy that wins the MVP walks away from the league. I just don't think there's a realistic option for him somewhere else. And the odds of him not playing they just don't add up to me. I expect him to be back, but you never know.
Yeah, a lot of times in sports, it's the player retires. Like Clayton Kershaw, he decided when he wanted to retire. Like he could have continued his career with the Texas Rangers. The Dodgers would have given him the contract too, right? A lot of times the game retires you, right? And Matthew Stafford is still playing at a high level. When he's right, he's a top 3 quarterback. I mean, he really is that good. And I think too, like it's tough to be able to like prove this stuff, like which guys love the game, which guys don't love the game. Like you can just see how much he enjoys playing football, how much he just loves throwing the pigskin out there. And when he executes that cross hash throw to Devontae Adams, like that gives him life, right? And that he's never going to experience that again once he's done.
Let me. I'm just going to put another guy out there that's a quasi contemporary of his, and I get you can make some mistakes if you're just reading this exclusively, but you put it in with everything else that you're talking about, Doug. Look at the body language between the way that he's going about it and the way that Aaron Rodgers is going about it. Aaron Rodgers looks like he's going to get his teeth pulled. He doesn't look like he's enjoying himself. He's on a team that's not very good. He's on a team that's in transition. He's gotten beat up a couple of years in New York. He looks like he's out there just killing time because he doesn't know what else to go do. Matthew Stafford looks like he's out there because he wants to win, because he's on a good team, because he loves football, because he loves throwing those passes that you're talking about. I just would be really surprised if he decides that he's done. And I think in order, there are 3 options. He retires, he plays for the Rams, or he plays for somewhere else. I think that the most likely scenario is he plays for the Rams, he retires, or he plays somewhere else. I don't think playing somewhere else is even real. You know what I mean? Where would he go where all of a sudden, because that joy we're talking about, that competitive spirit, where is it? I just don't think there's a better fit than what he has here in LA.
Yeah, like Aaron Donald was full. Like Matthew Stafford's not full yet. Like he goes, it's like when you go to like a restaurant and you get to go, and I'm always like, oh, I'll eat this tomorrow, and I eat like an hour later after I get home. You know what I mean? Like that's, I think Matthew Stafford, like he wants to get after it because I mean he doesn't have to get triple team and quad teamed like Aaron Donald, right? The name of the game is to protect him, and he can go out there and cook.
That's the big look. Donald is a great comparison. I love it. The difference is what Aaron Donald does physically hurts. It's 60 fist fights every Sunday. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun, even if you are Aaron Donald. The rules in the NFL, you don't get to hit the quarterback very often. I'm not saying that you can't get cracked once in a while, but it's not in the trenches. You're out there, and again, I don't know what Matthew Stafford's made in his career. 300 and some million, probably something like that, maybe more. But 50 plus million a year to go do it, and you're still really good at it. I don't know, man. I don't know how you say no to that.
Yeah, it's got to feel good too. I mean, for another comparison, LeBron James, who is still a really good basketball player, but you go to the Lakers forums and you see Lakers social media. It's kind of like half and half. Like LeBron, go retire, go to Cleveland, and for Matthew Stafford's like, please play 5 more years. Please don't leave us.
100%. The Rams, and look, this is anecdotal, but it's just my experience having covered this team for as long as I have and seeing kind of the ebb and the flow of it all. It feels like the Rams are getting closer and closer and closer to being on that level with those other, iconic LA teams like the Dodgers, like the Lakers, where people are deeply invested in it. I'm not saying there aren't a lot of people that already were, but it feels like that group is getting larger and larger the longer they're here. And the way you keep doing that is by winning. And the way you win in the NFL is with a great quarterback, and they have one.
Yeah, and honestly, we could probably talk about that later this week as a topic because I think it's definitely worth discussing. I mean, this title run had a different juice than I think even 2021 because that was so close to COVID. This one, the sports bars were jam-packed. You had SoFi Stadium with tons of fans there watching on the Halo. I mean, those 49er jerseys getting returned for Rams jerseys. And I think it's just that generation's growing up to see the Rams and like it's going to pay off. But it's funny you mentioned the Matthew Stafford, just kind of the routine. It's like an annual time-honored tradition now. It's like, will he play? Won't he play? Reminds me of that awesome SportsCenter commercial from back in the day where they're in the ESPN offices and they're wondering if Brett Favre was going to retire or not. And the dude picks up and he's like, he's back. And then Steve Leaves like, he's back. And then they go to Sam the Minuteman, who's the UMass mascot.
Yeah.
the lights up in the window. It's Stuart Scott and Scott Van Pelt walking by. And they're like, Scott's like, does 2 mean he's back? And Stu's like, no, 1 means he's back. He's like, I don't know.
Great.
Yeah,
It
reminds me of the good old days of Brett Favre, basically. But we know Stafford's not Brett Favre. Just believe it at that. But that is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. We'll continue to unpack the fallout of the NFC Championship game loss. Let us know who you're rooting for, by the way, in the Super Bowl. I'm rooting for Team Meteor. But let us know down below, and we'll be back tomorrow. My name is Doug McKay. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.